with the fuel story, India has reached its E20 or 20% ethanol blend petrol ahead of schedule early this year. As of February this year, ethanol blending averaged around 18%, with E20 crossing 20% soon thereafter. Now the government is targeting E27 or 27% ethanol blend by this month, even making E20 obsolete. Thereafter, the government is keen to push for E30 or 30% ethanol mixed in petrol by 2030. But there's a backlash. But first up, what is this ethanol blend? Well, simply put, the government wants to reduce its oil import bill and also cut emissions. Now, the savings to government by going ahead with blending 20% ethanol in petrol potentially leads to a saving of over 1 lakh crore rupees per year. Some estimates say that as much as 1,40,000 crore rupees per year has been saved by the government. But customers have taken to social media posting images of car manuals that say their OEM engines are suited to only take E10 or 10% ethanol mix as part of their petrol fuel mix. Some claim that E20 and further dilution of petrol with this flex fuel leads to lower mileage and engine corrosion. Many car models prior to 2023 are simply incompatible with E20 fuel. Government on its part has clarified that loss of mileage is no more than just 1 to 2%, and statistically there is no impact on engine health. But some additional wear and tear followed by inexpensive replacement of rubber parts and gaskets every 20 to 30,000 kilometers may be warranted. So let's unpack the user concerns and the science behind this new flex fuel composition with auto sector veteran Dilip Chenoy. Mr. Chenoy, good morning. Thank you for joining us here on News 9. I want to first up understand how valid are user concerns that their pre-2023 car models are in effect incompatible with the fuel available at petrol pumps today.
I think there is, as you said, there's a lot of debate going on here, and it's good that, your channel has agreed or has decided to actually look at these concerns. The first thing is that, the trials for E10 and the compatibility of the vehicles for this were being done actually since the early 2000s and mid 2000s. Right. And the whole idea here was to ensure that the transition to the new fuel happens with minimal impact on the owners and on the vehicles. Yes, there are two concerns that you have flagged. One is the reduced mileage, and of course, the ministry has come out very, very clearly saying that in cars it's like 1 to 2% or around 2 to 3%, and in two-wheelers it's a bit more. The second issue that you have actually flagged is about the wear and tear of the engines. Right. And the need for replacing specifically rubber parts which initially were seen as not compatible with E10 and then E20. This is a challenge, and I think it is the government has also clarified that these are low cost parts, and I think the SIAM is fully aware of this whole challenge, and I'm sure that the OEs will partner with government to actually address this challenge. But looking at the overall strategic importance, and just before this conversation, you had a full conversation on oil and our imports from Russia and the challenges and the prices going up. Right. Now, you talked about 1 lakh crores and 1,40,000 crores. It actually depends on the price of fuel. That's right. So therefore, overall strategic importance of the sector, it is important to make these transitions, and I think both industry and the consumers and government have to work together to ensure that this is as seamless as possible and with minimum inconvenience to the customers going forward.
Right, but let's stay on that for a moment, Mr. Chenoy, and the fact that the government is actually likely to save money on its oil import. Is there then a case for government-funded recall of these models of pre-2023 cars for their engine and parts upgrades to make them at least E27 compatible already?
I think that debate is currently on, and discussion is on how do you transition this, right? And it's India is a very different type of economy, and the customers and all are different, and you can actually notice it in this whole debate of end-of-life vehicles of 10 years and 15 years. One of the reasons for doing an end-of-life vehicle is to actually help customers manage this transition and go on to new fuels, etc.
Right.
I think the OEs could actually take kind of a lead here and work with government to actually address this issue, especially if going on to E27 and higher blends. In the recent Auto Expo, you saw even vehicles with higher, capacity to take even up to E100
Right.
being showcased. So I think the technology is there, how the OEs and the government work with consumers to actually make and address the issues will determine the future of how quickly we can go into higher blends of ethanol.
That's right, Mr. Chenoy. But is the concern really limited only to four-wheelers? Because end-of-life norms apply only for four-wheelers. There are enough and more two-wheelers which are on the roads, and these don't really have an end-of-life sort of a mandate, including some very old two-stroke engines. Are those engines ever going to be able to combust this E20 mix, leave alone E27 and E30 going forward?
Yeah, you are right in terms of the number of vehicles and predominantly India is 70% two-wheelers, right? And the consumption there is like, pretty high. So if you look at the cars, roughly around 53 to 54 million petrol vehicles are roughly on the road. But if you look at two-wheelers, it's close to 250 million. And therefore, in terms of numbers, this is a larger number. And the fuel efficiency actually drops a bit larger, but it's only 3 to 6% in two-wheelers. And the challenge here, I think the engine technology is not the issue. I think two strokes are mostly, a thing of the past because they don't even meet the emission norms, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm sure that a solution will be found as we go forward.
All right. Also help us understand, Mr. Chenoy, what is the global norm for ethanol mix? Now, we know in India for sure that Road Highways Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, has been pushing for flex fuel. But is it a well-tested mix globally, especially because temperatures in India vary from extreme hot to extreme cold, and the combustion of fuel pretty much, varies with those extreme temperatures as well. So what is the norm globally, and are these tests valid for India?
No, I think let's be clear that for the Indian condition, I think tests have been done. I think way back in 2009, 2010 itself, existing vehicles were taken off the road and tests were done for the impact of E10, right? Similarly, in when the transition to E20 happened, similar tests were done. Regarding globally, I think Brazil is the leader in this, and I think the high temperatures is in Brazil also. Some parts can reach high temperatures. There are global rules. I think in the US you are actually having the E10 standard blend, E15 coming in. Of course, you are even they're looking at blends of as high as 51 to 83%. I'm just taking US as an example. And many parts of US, if you look at the South, like Texas and others, have similar high temperatures. Similarly, like Brazil is the leader in flex fuel. They have actually, in Brazil, it's even more interesting because they have flex fuel dispensing vehicles where you can choose the blend that you want. And they have even E100 fuel there. European Union also has common E5 and E10. And also they're introducing, I think, E85, which is allowed in some countries like France and Sweden. In France, also temperatures can actually go up higher. EU talks about labeling. So you have different, most countries have different blends there. Brazil, of course, is the leader in this.
Right.
And I don't think, there's a lot of research and all being done, a lot of testing being done before the first E10 was introduced in India, and similarly it was repeated for E20.
Right.
So I think the OEs most of the OEs also operate in Brazil, so they are aware of the challenges here. Two-wheelers is a challenge, and I think the Indian two-wheeler companies are actually on top of it at the moment, and they'll go. And as the blends increase, I'm sure they will be able to address the concerns of customers.
Right. Before I let you go, Mr. Chenoy, let's just bring the user, the consumer, back in the center of this debate. Now, there is no denying that there is going to be, although minimal impact, but there is likely to be an impact on the mileage. There is going to be additional wear and tear on the engine. And the government is saving money, no doubt, by doing this ethanol mix. Should some of that discount, at least on fuel prices, be passed on to consumers to just make this a more acceptable norm for those who queue up and get fuel in their fuel tanks?
I think you're seeing it actually happening, right? If you go over the last year, whether the price of global fuel has gone up to over 100 or 120 or remained at 70 or whatever it is, the government has kind of kept the price pretty stable. And I think their pricing formula.
But sir, that's also because the government never cut prices when oil came down below 60 or around $60 a barrel as well. So government has balanced it out, hasn't really given the discount, has it?
No, it's linked to it. And I'm sure when they're looking at the pricing, they're actually factoring in the E20 ethanol mix going forward, because it makes sense to do that, right? And of course, we are talking when, yesterday Niti Aayog released the EV roadmap, right? So there are multiple ways to actually address the fuel challenge. E20 is one of the ways. Of course, it impacts a lot of existing ICE vehicles. But as a country, it's strategically very important that we reduce our dependence on oil. But yes, the benefits should be given to the customers and to the users there. In Brazil, it is actually if you use a higher blend, it's a bit cheaper. Right? So there are models that the country can follow.